Welcome everyone again to the Learning to Birth webinar series, where we interview some of the world's most interesting and thought-provoking thought leaders on birth and pregnancy around the world. My name is Akasha, and today we have with us Susan Ross. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
It's really beautiful, everyone. Susan's in Australia, in the Blue Mountains, and she played a really beautiful role in my own first birth and pregnancy. We can talk about that later, but just so that you know a little bit about her, Susan is a midwife who's worked in birth centres, delivery suites, newborn care, early discharge programs, childbirth education, antenatal clinics, and much more in both public and private hospitals for over 40 years. Now, Susan's a hypnotherapist and NLP coach, and the creator of Inside Birth Educator training and our birth doula and postnatal doula training, and author of 2 books. Of course, I've read one of them, Birthright by Random House and Doulas, Why Every Pregnant Woman Deserves One. That's a beautiful, beautiful life there, Susan.
Yes, people often ask me, so, you get to a certain age and people say, so are you still working? Which is a highly offensive question. Just because you've got grey hair and a few lines, it is offensive to be asked that. But I don't think of it as work. It is my life's passion, and I love what I do. I don't ever think about it as work. I mean, being with pregnant women, labouring women, birthing women, postnatal women, I mean, it's just to be involved in the beginning of life is a very beautiful thing, and I'm very privileged to have had a long career in that area. And I just have to correct one thing. I have a background in nursing and midwifery, but not currently registered.
No, that's fine. We totally understand. And it's really beautiful that you're here. Now, everyone, Birthright, the book, was probably the first or one of the first birth education books I read. And this was about 13 years ago when I had my son. And it blew my mind. The sort of things that was in this book, no one had ever talked to me about. I had no idea. I really would have loved to have read it probably even before falling pregnant, Susan. And, hopefully we're going to talk about some of the beautiful things and wisdom that you have in that today. But do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and how you ended up doing what you're doing and writing those amazing books and teaching these courses?
Yes, look, I did general nursing, which was 4-year hospital-based training, and then the only reason I did midwifery was because we were encouraged to do that. It was the only reason we would get a job, we were told, if we had a second qualification. So I had no interest at all as a very young 20-something-year-old, and off I went to do midwifery, and I hated every minute of it. I was in a large teaching hospital in Sydney, and I never quite understood what I hated about it, but after I finished the training, I then went to a very small regional hospital in Western New South Wales. And I was really looking forward to getting back into general nursing, to getting back into A&E stuff. It was a tiny hospital. It was about 35, 40 bed hospital. So I'd been there for about 3 months, and in through the door one night, in the middle of the night, came a labouring woman, which really freaked me out as I knew nothing. Even though I'd done my training in a large teaching hospital, I knew nothing. And the nurse's aide that was there at the time said, oh, okay, off you go sort of thing. And I said, oh, no, I'll ring the GP. So there was one GP in this town. And they said, oh, no, you can't ring him. He's an alcoholic, and we only contact him between 9 and 5, Monday to Friday, and then it's always a bit dodgy, and that's why you've been employed. You're actually the only midwife in the district. Well, I absolutely, yes, freaked out big time. So I spent the next few months with a labouring woman in one room and my midwifery textbook in the other. And I ran like a lunatic back from one to the other. So these nurses' aides looked at me with much amusement, I think. And the interesting thing was that I could never find the correct chapter that related to what the woman was doing, which was really, really frustrating. And finally, after a long time of doing this, one of the nurses' aides said to me, why don't you just close the book? She did suggest that I actually throw it out the window, which was just, how could I possibly cope if I threw my one and only information source out the window? She said, because all she is doing is having a baby and she just wants you to just be. Well, I had no idea what that meant, and it was pretty horrifying. But I did eventually leave my, close my textbook. I did eventually then leave it at home. I've never ever thrown it in the bin, but I didn't use it after that. And I got this amazing feeling of just sitting with women. I felt like I was doing nothing, but these women birthed beautifully. They were in a small regional hospital. There was no epidural services available, so it wasn't even in their head to ask for an epidural. It wasn't available, so it wasn't in their mind. And they would birth beautifully, and then I was showered with gifts and champagne and isn't she wonderful midwife? And I think, but I haven't done anything. And it took me a very long time to realise that that's what women wanted, just for you to be with them, just to hold that space. And I know that's a term that's bandied about a lot, you know, hold space for women. But it did take me a long time to actually understand what that was and what that meant. And it actually means just supporting the energy in the room and being a protector of her from anything else that might interfere with what that woman needed to do. And so I feel like I did my midwifery training in a very small country hospital, not in a large teaching hospital.
I think you're very brave. I don't think anyone has so far come on this series and said, I didn't like midwifery, I didn't know what to do. This is an incredible story. I'm totally blown away because, like, you didn't throw the textbook out, it's still living somewhere, but you know, you kind of ended up writing your own textbook. And like that textbook, Birthright, you know, for what was around like 13 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to give really informed consent to anything had I not read that book. There was nothing else like it. You know, we didn't really have the internet then with everything on it. We didn't have all these videos everywhere, didn't have courses everywhere. And of course, my medical providers, like most, they don't have much time, in and out kind of thing. They're just like, listen to me, I'm the expert. What are you questioning for me? Get out. And that book, you know, because I think I got hold of that book. I'm not going to remember how. I must have found it somewhere. Because I wanted to have a natural birth. And I was like, if I want to have a natural birth, I need to know how. Like, I need to know what everything is so I know what's natural and what's not. And your book was just like that magical opening experience for me, and like in terms of like all the options out there and what they all mean and what they all do. So I don't know if you want to like, and the purpose of like reading that book was so that I could have a baby that was like an attached baby, like a natural birth, so that I could have a really attached baby. So do you want to talk about infant bonding and maybe how, you know, some mums, if she wants to optimize her birth for infant bonding, like maybe like what she needs to know about her choices or what paths she might want to take?
Well, I'll tell you how that book came about. I had worked in lots of different maternity hospitals, in major hospitals in cities, in the country, interstate and overseas, and I was a single parent of 2 small children myself, so I worked on what's called the casual pool in a large teaching hospital in Sydney, and that enabled me to go to lots of different areas. So, you know, a lot of midwives get stuck in either labour ward or, you know, a postnatal ward, and they stay there for 30 years and they don't know about any other area, which is quite extraordinary as well. So I got to work in lots of different areas, and I did a lot of childbirth education. I trained as a childbirth educator. I worked in, you know, running clinics in birth centres and midwives clinics, and then came the opportunity for me to manage the childbirth education centre and write a program in a private hospital, which was attached to a major public hospital. I naively thought that this was a golden opportunity to, you set the tone for private hospitals and natural birth, because it was in a particular area in Sydney that women were had a lot of money. They were doing all the right things in terms of yoga and acupuncture and seeing their naturopath, chiro, all of those sorts of things. And they went to a private hospital believing that their private health fund was the best option. If you had private health insurance, then you were going to get a 5-star service. And that's how it was sold. So I set up a program there, wrote the program about normal birth, and I had about 5 educators. We're all teaching the same thing, empowering women. And I constantly got into lots of trouble with obstetricians for promoting normal birth. So the clear message over the few years I was there was that you need to promote the benefits of caesarean sections and epidurals, because I was told by a whole lot of male obstetricians that that's what women want. So that did not go down very well with me, because I had a lot of women who were saying, I want to have a water birth. And you would have to burst their bubble by saying, look, you can't actually have a water birth in a private hospital. Obstetricians are not trained in water birth. They don't know about water birth. But did you know that next door at the large public teaching hospital, there's a birth centre? You can have continuity of care with a midwife. You can have a water birth. Why don't you go and investigate that? Do yourself and your baby a favour and go and have a look at the facility, and these are the questions you should ask that midwife. And so a lot of them were opting out of care from the obstetrician. So I was seen to be taking business away from that obstetrician. No one ever said, well done for empowering this woman in and giving her the options and saying, you can choose wherever you go. It's irrelevant what your private health insurance covers, really. You choose where you want to go, and there's a whole lot of choices and a whole lot of options. These are the questions you should ask, and most importantly, these are the answers that you should be getting. So, there was one particular obstetrician in this hospital who used to, when women would confront him and say, well, what about next door where there's a birth centre and a water birth? And he would say, yes, but, a private hospital, you get 5-star service. When you go to a public hospital, you get 1-star service. Now, that's a shocking thing to say to a woman, and totally not true. In fact, I would argue that it's the opposite. You get many more services in a public hospital and doing midwifery care than you ever do in a private hospital. And women would go and do a tour of the delivery suite in the private hospital and see that there was a big bath there. Well, why can't I birth in that? Well, they've got no water birth policy. Obstetricians don't want you to birth in water because most of them don't understand water birth. And they will pull the plug even if you're in there. So it is not possible for you to have a water birth. And the reason that deep spa bath is there really is it's a marketing tool. And women fall for it. And I just had one story after another. I was there for about 5 years, and I got really, really angry that women were being lied to about what happens and not being told about their options. And all of us educators that were there were being strongly criticised for telling women about their options and their choices. So it was very, very frustrating. So all the stories in that book come directly from the women that we looked after in that private hospital. Names changed for obvious reasons.
I don't know the exact timeline of things, the exact facts, but certainly around the time when I was researching things 13 years ago, you were really the only advocate that I came across at that time who was actually there. It wasn't just a pretty book about birth or how to do it. It was like, if you're in the hospital system, these are the questions you're going to need to ask, and these are some of the reactions you might get. And I actually took your book on board and I asked them, and I got those reactions, and I wasn't in that place. I was still in my early 20s. I was a different person. I wasn't in that place to, you know, see the warning signs, and then I didn't even know where else to go. You know, birth centers were full up. I didn't have money for a home birth midwife, anything like that. So I stayed where I was, and I think I wrote to you afterwards and I said, look, absolutely everything that happened right in my birth was because I had your book. I listened to it, and I don't think I said this, but all the things that went wrong were because I didn't listen to it, you know, and I didn't just get out of there and walk out, you know, or whatever it was. I didn't have enough faith. I wasn't in the place as a woman to have enough faith and trust in myself and my boundaries yet, and imagine that I can do this on my own and work it all out. So I guess, you know, the world is different now. The world has shifted. There's a lot of people now who are out there, you know, with information about what questions to ask your obstetrician and so forth like that. But, you know, from the place that we are now in the world, you know, what would you say to a woman who's going into the birthing, you know, domain as a new mom? Like, what does she need to know? What does she need to ask? What are the real things she needs to know?
Yeah, first and foremost, she needs to have a doula. I mean, I'm really passionate about this. I've worked for many years as a doula because I actually think doulas are, it's what true midwifery is. Oh, there's going to be a whole lot of midwives.
I actually got attacked on Facebook the other day for saying that, because I believe in the non-medical framework of birth. I see birth as a part of our sexuality. And I did say that, and then I had a lot of attacks, and I was like, I'm just going to delete that comment. So it's okay, Susan, you can say it here. There's no comment deleting it here, okay?
Yeah, look, I have been accused many times of being way too honest, but it is really, really important to understand that midwifery has changed, and many midwives are getting out of the profession just because they are between a rock and a hard place. And even if a woman's doing a continuity of midwifery model of care, there is no guarantee that that midwife is going to be there on the day. And that midwife who works in a hospital, or even a home birth midwife these days, her number one priority is to follow the policies and procedures and follow all the rules and regulations of that hospital and the Department of Health. Legally, that is what she has to do. And so inevitably that woman comes second, which is what puts true midwives in, you know, into a really difficult category. So having a doula makes a huge difference, because doulas, their first priority and their only priority is to make sure that that woman has the birth experience that she wants. So doing doula training with me, one of the unique reasons we run doula training is because they get the benefit of my many years experience working in hospitals. So I really am passionate about teaching doulas how the system works. You have to have an understanding of the system. You have to know how an obstetrician thinks and why he's thinking like that, and how a midwife thinks and how an anaesthetist thinks, and how to be able to massage some of those policies and procedures for the benefit of a woman, whilst maintaining the basic, as long as it's safe, for mum and baby. You know, I think every person who enters the doors of a hospital probably needs a doula, because a doula is an advocate, and I don't care whether you're going into a hospital as the world's most intelligent person or what background you come from, you are very vulnerable, and you are not at your most clear thinking, decision-making best. And to be able to have that, someone who's got your back, who understands the system, who knows why an obstetrician might be suggesting something at a particular point in labour. Yes. And you've got someone there with the knowledge and the skills to be able to massage and manoeuvre that conversation in an incredibly respectful way, because you are a guest in that hospital. even though it's a room that you are paying for, you do have a responsibility to follow some of those policies and procedures by the very nature of choosing to birth in a hospital. So having a doula there is really that buffer between, you know, what someone might be encouraging or suggesting, and being able to manage that as well.
That was actually advice of yours that I followed. I don't think it was very common back 13 years ago. I didn't know what a doula was until I read your book. So big advert here really for your book, really, and how awesome it is. Like, you know, how, but probably the whole reason this thing exists today, what I'm doing, is because I found out what a doula was, and I went and talked to a doula. Luckily, I found a doula in my community, Brisbane, who she'd been at hundreds of births. I'm not sure whether it was 500 then or whether that was when I saw her the next time, but it was a few hundred already.
Right.
And she taught me all these things about birth that no one else had ever said. They weren't anywhere else that I could have found them. I don't even know if they were in books back then. Maybe some of the things were like in Suzanne Weed's Wise Woman model. There were other things that she told me. Some things she told me that even no one else, I haven't found anywhere since, but they worked for me. And she empowered me in a way as a birthing woman and as a, you know, a sexual woman that just existed nowhere else in society. So, you know, definitely, I would definitely concur there, you know, whether or not, you know, however your birth pans out, you know, having a doula there finding one that's respected and trusted in the community and has experience you'll open your mind to a world worth of knowledge that no amount of visits to your doctor obstetrician will ever kind of give to you, you know. And she, you know, will prepare you with so many things that might happen, you know, that will come.
And I think one of the really important roles of a doula is looking after dad. You know, I think these days there is a lot of pressure on men to be present and to participate in a certain way. And there's a lot of doulas and midwives who say, well, to dad, well, you know, when this is happening, you must massage, or you must do this, or you must do something else. And there's a surprising number of men who, when asked privately, would say, I'd really prefer not to be there. But they're not asked. It's one of the questions when I'm meeting a couple for the first time. I ask them, have you had the conversation about what role he might like to play? And I always say to a dad, you know, having a doula there just means that you can relax and enjoy becoming a dad, whatever that looks like for you on the day. And then I tell them you won't know until you're there. And that might mean, you know, just tag teaming car parking, or tag teaming having a little sleep, or going and having coffee, standing out in the sunshine for 5 minutes. It just means that the woman has someone there who's always fresh and alert, because you are looking after yourselves as well. And you do support many births where dads want to be really involved and you're like the second support person. But the majority of them, you are the main support person, and dad is happy to just be around and hang about and do whatever. But a doula allows him to feel safe doing that, yeah, and okay to do that. And I think that's really important.
Well, you've got your doula training, of course, that you do now in Australia. I guess for a mum who needs to pick a doula, how does she pick a doula that's right for her?
Yeah, and there's lots of questions to ask. And I think one of the first questions to ask is, where did you do your training? And, you know, what's your philosophy on birth? I think, you know, a lot of women are attracted to doula work after they've had their own baby. And very often that birth has gone pear-shaped. And so they've now learned some information, and they now want to come and, you know,
heal,
sometimes rescue women.
Yeah.
I mean, as women, we're all good at rescuing. My God, you know, I've come from a nursing, midwifery, teaching background, so, and a mum and a grandmother. So yes, you have to separate that rescuing role. And so through my hypnotherapy practice, I do offer all my doulas their own personal birth debriefing, because you have to get rid of your own birthing stuff before you can support a woman. Because it will come out for you as the doula when you go to your first birth and you're there and you're present, especially if there's, you know, that cascade of medical intervention might start and the doula's thinking, oh my goodness, this is what happened to me. And she then is not the best support. So I think it's very important for women to ask those questions about where did you do your training, and what's your philosophy on birth? You know, are you going to be around and available from what week? How long will it take you to get there? Will you hang about with me at home? You know, in the doula's book, as in the birthright book, there is a whole lot of questions that they should be asking, but it is about the connection that you have. So I think I encourage women to meet at least 2 doulas, maybe 3. And, you know, someone might meet me with decades of experience, and then they might meet a trainee doula, but they have a better connection with the trainee doula, then that's who they should go with. It's about that connection that you've got and that immediate bond that you feel like you've got with that woman.
That's actually really interesting advice. Go with the person that you've got the bond with. And I think that resonates with a lot of what some of the other topics that we've had on this webinar series, in that, you know, it's about feeling safe, and it's about being with the care providers you feel safe with, and following your instincts and what feels good. And yeah, that's really powerful advice.
And I think it's really important to ask a doula how she would manage, you know, any sort of conflict. Because, you know, there can be that thing in labour where, you know, a brand new face walks into the room. I'm the registrar, I'm the obstetrician, I'm the consultant, I'm the whatever. And what I'm recommending is, you know, you have an epidural, you have this, you have that, or go for a cesarean section, whatever. So, you know, it is good to ask a doula how she would manage that and just see what her response is. And if you've got a doula that's there, you know, going, well, I'd be, you know, and she gets all fired up about it, then that's not the right response. You have to be very calm. You have to have a degree of intelligence about the way you go about communicating with an obstetrician. Yeah. Because you have to understand why he's suggesting that. And that's probably a whole other webinar about where obstetricians are coming from. Because they're also between a rock and a hard place, and more of them are getting sued, which is why their insurance is going through the roof, which is why women are being charged more. You know, it becomes this vicious cycle, really.
We had an interesting discussion actually with Dr. Michael Klein, who was responsible for the randomized control trial on whether episiotomies were actually beneficial or not, and found, of course, and this was like 1979, definitely not beneficial. And
No.
yes, that was a really interesting discussion about obstetricians and how to find one that you have a relationship of trust with.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to listen there, although obviously we're interested in what your thoughts are, but definitely, okay, so definitely have a doula, definitely ask about what their training is, and pick one that you feel like you resonate with. And
yeah, and is she being mentored? So I mentor all our trainee doulas, but then once they're qualified, I also offer a mentoring service. And, you know, I have a mentor. I mean, we all need someone to mentor us, somewhere where you can go, you know, do a dummy spit. Oh my God, I've just been to this birth and this happened and that happened and something else happened. Yeah, we all need that.
Do you want to talk about the hypnotherapy that you do?
Yes.
Like, talk about that? Okay.
I'm very, very passionate about this. So the childbirth education classes that we run, or the childbirth education training that I do, is called Inside Birth. So
Inside Birth.
inside birth, yeah. So
yeah.
it
We'll
is.
we'll put the links down below this so people can look it up.
Great. So it is talking about parenting from conception. So, you know, there is overwhelming research about babies are cognizant, aware, sentient, and we need to start parenting from conception. And you have the opportunity to lay down an imprint that's going to serve that baby well for the rest of their life. But it starts from in utero. So it's lots of fun, and it's also teaching really deep hypnosis for labour and birth. So we run a 4-day training program, and we've got some inside birth educators sprinkled over the country, but we'd like lots more as well. And this is an Australian-based program. I know there's lots of other. I think this is a minefield for women. You know, what prenatal class to book into, and that education is crucial. I never recommend doing a prenatal class in a hospital, even though I have taught prenatal classes in hospitals for many, many years. They are ruled by the hospital hierarchy, the obstetricians. You know, I had a couple recently, very recently, a few weeks ago, who came in and said, oh, we went to this prenatal class. We only went to one of a 6-week program, and we walked in, and the midwife who was running the program said, I think there were 12 couples in the group, and she said, okay, so 1 in 2 of you is going to end up with a cesarean section. That's a fact. That was her opening statement before she even introduced herself.
My God, go read Simona May Gaskin books, lady, and see that that is not a fact. It's not a fact. That's a terrible way to introduce birth to these people.
Yeah, and I think that's no doubt that person's coming from good intention. She really thinks that is the statistics in that hospital. And so she's doing a reality check for those women. But this couple said, we're not going to that anymore. And they came and did our class and just couldn't believe the difference, because we don't talk about that at all, because you don't want to have it in your mind. So I really like to get women who are thinking about having a baby. This is in an ideal world. I would like all women to come, and dads as well, who are actually thinking, you know what, in 6 months' time, we're going to conceive a baby, or 3 months, or next year, or whatever, and actually heal their mind from any stuff. We've all got stuff in our head, relationships that they might have with their mum. My first question in all my hypnotherapy sessions is, do you know how you were born? So it's very important to understand that imprint and to be able to change some of those things, because many girls come and say, you know, I'm pregnant, I'll probably have a cesarean because my mum had 3 cesareans, my sisters had 2, so that's the path I'm on. And that's about the imprint in her subconscious mind. So that's not the truth, and we need to change that, yeah? So there's many cultures around the world, like the Tibetans. They do a lot of mind healing before they conceive. They get rid of all their crap, and they heal any relationships that need to be healed, so that their mind is prepared for birth. We all know the importance of preparing our body physically and stopping smoking and drinking and all of that sort of stuff, and getting fit and healthy. But preparing your mind, I think the mind is the most important organ involved in birthing.
Yes, absolutely. I'd absolutely agree with you there. You know, to do hypnotherapy with you, is that something people can do? They come to your classes in Sydney or Blue Mountains, or how do they do it with you?
So I have a space in Lura in the Blue Mountains where I do hypnotherapy face-to-face, but I can also do it via Skype or Zoom as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really beautiful. Now, have you got an upcoming book, another book that you're doing?
I do.
Tell us about it.
I don't have a title for it, but it is all about the mind and all about the blueprint that you're laying down for that newborn baby, and how that imprint that you are born with affects everything you do in your entire life. So what a golden opportunity for a woman who is thinking about having a baby to heal all of that and have that knowledge and that insight about how to lay down that blueprint, and what amazing fun games you can play with your unborn baby. Yeah, parenting certainly does not start at the beginning of birth.
Can you tell us some of those games, like what games we can play with our unborn baby? Is there anything you can say here?
Oh, look, I had a delightful woman a couple of years ago who was a musician and a composer.
Yeah.
And she told me this beautiful story about she had a music stand, and then she, was writing down all this stuff, and she had a keyboard there. And she said she didn't realise this was a sort of habit that she had even before she was pregnant, but she would think about a melody or a rhythm, and she would tap it out just on her belly. Even when she wasn't pregnant, it was just a tapping thing, and then she'd get and compose, and then she'd write it down. So she was doing this all the way through pregnancy and singing at the same time. And one song she was really, really stuck on, and she kept doing this tapping, and then the baby started tapping back in exactly the same rhythm. And so this was a game they played attached to music, and we know how important music is to the unborn baby. And she had lots and lots of fun doing that. And I have no doubt that that baby was born with a strong music gene. So there's lots of things that you can do. And I think one of the most important basic things that you can do is just talk to your baby as if they are there. So when you wake up in the morning, to say, good morning, baby. Oh, my bladder's really full. I'm going to go and do a big wee now. Now we're going to get into the shower. Oh, I love this hot water on my back. Now we're having breakfast. Okay, we've got to go to work. Now, I know for a few hours at work, I'm not going to be able to chat to you because I'm busy doing work stuff that's not got to do with you. So it's like when mum or dad maybe have a disagreement, it's always important to say to that baby, just touch your belly and say to that baby, you know what, your dad and I are disagreeing about climate change and the way the government's handling that, and your dad thinks this and I think that. It's not got to do with you. Because as a parent, that's what we do when our children are actually here. And you can observe a child, a toddler, in the corner or standing to the side listening to mum and dad arguing, and we all have arguments with our partners. That's a normal part of life. But to be able to explain it to that child, hey, your dad and I are just disagreeing about blah, blah, it's not got to do with you, darling. That child will immediately go off and play, and they'll be quite happy, knowing that it's not their issue and they're not the cause of it. And that's really basic and really, really important. But if you start that stuff in utero, that baby's going to be born with a happy, healthy mind and really looking forward to meeting their mum and dad and feeling safe and secure.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you, Susan, today. We've had a really beautiful discussion, and I'm really inspired to read your next book. And so your trainings at the moment, are they there? When's in it? Like, this webinar is going to be up probably for a few years, so people will be able to find out about this over time. But like, how do people follow you and come to your website and find out about your trainings and things?
Yes, so they can click on the training. So we offer 3 trainings: birth doula training, which is 6 months of online theory, and then it's followed by a face-to-face weekend workshop in the beautiful Blue Mountains. And then they do 2 trainee births, and they're fully mentored throughout that. We've got postnatal doula training, which is all online. And then we've got our inside birth childbirth educator training, which is 4-day face-to-face training. And so if they get onto the website and just look under training, it's all there.
That's amazing. Look, it's beautiful that you've had all these years dedicated to this and gone through such a journey, not just writing books, but doing the courses now, making sure that the legacy of everything that you've taught, that you've learned is sort of continued on and spread out around Australia and the world. What's your vision for what, what birth, like what is our birthright? What's your vision for what birth is meant to look like, in the future coming up?
Oh, I think birth in the future, we need to go back to listening to our heart and following our instincts and blocking out all the noise and all the information and all the chatter about how you should birth. Women just need to understand about birth, but not learn about how to birth, because women know how to birth. They just need to feel safe and secure in making sure that they can do whatever they need to do on the day. And you can teach all sorts of classes about, getting into a different position or using a fit ball or standing in the shower or doing massage, but women will do that spontaneously. I don't believe that needs to be taught. I think women need to, if they need to learn anything, it's about the system, it's getting a doula, and it's learning about how to relax and enjoy pregnancy, enjoy their labour and birth, and working with their baby and welcoming that baby into the world. And I hope in the future we have lots of freestanding birth centres that are affordable for women to go to, and that they're not attached to a hospital. It's crazy, really. If you think about going to a hospital, I mean, most people would go to a hospital if they were really sick and ill and dying. Even then, I'd think twice. But that's what hospitals are set up for. So it's crazy that we have attached to that hospital a place where women give birth, because it's got nothing to do with birth. Birth's a normal life event. It's, women are designed to give birth. It's why we were put on this earth, to give birth normally, not have to go to a hospital, where subconsciously women know there are all these services, pain relief and caesarean sections and NICUs and all of this. Whereas if you birth in a freestanding birth centre or you birth at home, it's not in your head that that's there and available. So women just get on with it and birth beautifully. So that's my vision for the future, that we get out of the direct hospital situation and there are more freestanding birth centres.
I think
that will be covered by Medicare.
I think that's a beautiful vision, and I think it can definitely happen. I think that once women become more willing to take back birth as part of their sexuality, and it can be a medical event, just like anything in life can be a medical event, but it is not innately a medical event.
It's a rare event, yeah.
When women take it back as part of their sexual beingness, then they're going to ask. As a customer, the customer is going to ask.
Yes.
And I think as a result of the customer asking, there'll be a business model and someone will say, yes, we don't need to just make money from birth or only make money from birth as a medical event. We can actually make money from birth as an empowering, inspiring, sexual liberating event for women,
Of course. Yeah.
Look, it's been beautiful talking, Suzanne. Hopefully we'll catch up again soon, certainly about your new book coming out. And how do people follow you online? How do they do that again?
Yes, so we're on Facebook, Birthright Training Academy, so they can follow me there.
Oh, beautiful. Everyone, thanks for joining us for this webinar. You can follow Learn to Birth or Learning to Birth. It's just at Learn to Birth on Instagram and Facebook. And we really appreciate you joining us today. And thank you, Susan, for joining us.
Pleasure.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.